So, um, imagine someone walks right up to you, looking completely serious, points at this heavy box, and says, "Hey, can you give me a hand with this?"
Right. And if you're relying entirely on like a literal dictionary translation for that moment, it is a deeply concerning request.
Yeah, I mean, you're suddenly looking around for a medical kit or a saw. Do they want the left arm or the right arm? Do I just chop it off right here?
Exact.
It's a
Well,
terrifying image if you don't know the context.
uh,
But of course, they don't want your actual physical hand. They just want your help. And I think it's a perfect example of the massive gap between classroom English and real-world English.
which is the core focus of today's deep dive. We are exploring materials from an English learning program that entirely bypasses that standard, rigid textbook grammar.
Right, because we want to unlock what they call the secret language of English.
Hmm.
We're really stepping into the messy, fast-paced world of nuance, slang, and idioms today.
And for anyone listening who is learning English and, wants to finally feel comfortable in everyday conversations, this is the key. Textbooks are fantastic for building a foundation, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. They give you the verb tenses and the vocabulary.
Yeah, but relying solely on textbook English can actually trap you. The sources literally call it the textbook trap, and escaping it requires mastering the art of something called softening.
Softening.
Oh.
Okay. So why is that so important?
Well, the psychology behind this is really fascinating, particularly when you look at English-speaking cultures like the US and the UK. In those cultures, being too direct is frequently perceived as aggressive.
Or just straight up confrontational?
Exactly. So the primary mechanism native speakers use to navigate this is indirectness.
Let's look at the most basic social interaction. Someone asks how you are. The standard textbook answer that gets drilled into every beginner's head is, "I am fine."
Right, which is grammatically flawless.
No.
But conversationally, it is a total dead end.
Yeah, it creates a burden for the other person. "I am fine" gives them absolutely nothing to work with. You're basically closing the door on the interaction.
You really are. So to build a connection, the sources actually suggest banning the phrase, "I'm fine" entirely.
Wait, ban it entirely.
Yep. Just replace it with specific, vivid descriptors.
The examples they give actually completely change the dynamic. Like if you've had a chaotic week, unfinished projects are everywhere, your desk looks like a disaster zone, you say, "I'm feeling a bit scattered."
Notice what that specific word does, though. Scattered paints a visual picture of your mental state.
Right.
It acts as an invitation for the other person to engage. It naturally prompts them to ask, "Oh, what's going on? Why are you scattered?"
Or, if you want a positive example, instead of a generic, "I'm good," you could say you feel invigorated because maybe you started waking up early to run.
Yeah, you're signaling that you're filled with life and energy. It transforms this robotic exchange into a genuine human interaction.
Which is huge for building confidence. But I feel like that transformation becomes even more critical when you have to deliver negative information.
Oh, definitely. This is where the cultural aversion to directness really shows up.
Let's say a friend takes you to a new restaurant. They picked it out, they're super excited about it, but you take one bite and realize, it's terrible.
Right, so the textbook response would be, "I do not like this restaurant. The food is bad."
Saying that out loud feels like you're delivering a punch to the stomach.
It really does.
You're attacking their taste and their choice directly.
And the emotional impact of that bluntness is severe. So native speakers use what the sources call softeners. These are basically linguistic shock absorbers.
I love that analogy. It's like speaking pure textbook English is like driving a car with no shock absorbers.
Yeah.
Every single bump just feels harsh. Softeners are the suspension system that makes the conversational ride smooth and comfortable for everyone.
That's exactly it. So instead of declaring, "I do not like this restaurant," a native speaker will pivot to, "I'm not a huge fan of this place."
The shift in psychology there is brilliant. By saying, "I'm not a huge fan," you take that harsh, objective spotlight off the restaurant itself.
You're reframing the criticism as just a mild, subjective limitation of your own preferences.
Right. You aren't saying the place is objectively terrible. You're just gently admitting it doesn't align with your personal taste.
It protects the other person's ego. And instead of following up with, "The food is bad," the sources recommend a phrase like, "The food is a little hit or miss."
Hit or miss. It is such a diplomatic mechanism. You're introducing the concept of probability into the critique.
Exactly. Sometimes the kitchen gets it right, which is a hit, and sometimes they fail, a miss.
So you soften the blow by acknowledging that the restaurant might be capable of good food, just, not on this particular plate.
Yeah. And this concept of softening extends heavily into the professional world as well.
Well, I bet. The workplace requires a really delicate balance of clarity and politeness.
The sources provide a great scenario where a coworker asks if you finished a report. The literal textbook answer is, no, I have not finished the report.
Which, in an office environment, sounds incredibly cold. It sounds like you're shutting the person down and signaling that you just don't care about their needs.
It strips away all the collaborative context. So to restore that context, native speakers add tiny modifying words. Instead of a flat no, they say, I haven't quite finished it just yet.
The heavy lifting those two words, quite and yet do, is remarkable.
It really is.
Adding yet changes the entire trajectory of the sentence. It tells your coworker that the report is actively in motion, implying a future where their needs will be met.
It drastically reduces their anxiety. Furthermore, the sources point out that phrases like kind of or sort of function similarly by inviting empathy.
Right. Like if someone asks if you're tired, a blunt yes builds a wall.
But answering, I'm kind of tired, it's been a long day, shows a level of vulnerability. It softens your boundary just enough to let the other person relate to you.
Okay, so if softeners are the suspension system that makes our language car ride smoothly, slang is something entirely different. It's how you choose to present yourself.
Yeah, we can think of it as the wardrobe of language.
And just as you wouldn't wear, like, fuzzy pajamas to a formal corporate board meeting, the golden rule of slang is that context is king.
Absolutely. Slang presents a unique challenge for learners because it operates like fast fashion.
Fast fashion? How so?
Well, it's highly contextual, largely informal, and constantly shifting. A word that dominated internet subcultures 2 years ago might sound completely outdated today.
But avoiding slang entirely makes you sound unnatural, right?
Exactly. The sources highlight a current, highly pervasive slang word, which is vibes.
The journey of the word vibes is fascinating. I mean, it started as a shortened form of vibrations, but it has completely morphed into a catch-all term for the general energy or atmosphere of a place or a person.
Yeah, like you walk into a dimly lit coffee shop with soft jazz playing and you say, this place has a relaxing vibe.
Or it can describe an interpersonal dynamic. Hanging out with a friend without any pressure or specific plans is often described as just vibing.
The utility of the word is in its broadness. It captures a really complex emotional assessment in 2 syllables.
But that exact broadness is why the pajamas in the boardroom rule is so vital.
Right.
Imagine you're sitting in a high-stakes strategy meeting with the CEO. They ask for your analysis on the Q4 financial projections.
Oh, no.
And you lean back and say, yeah, the budget numbers have a bad vibe, boss.
You have made a massive miscalculation. It would be a catastrophic professional error.
The boardroom demands precision and standard English. A bad vibe relies on intuition, whereas business requires concrete data.
In that context, you must swap the casual wardrobe for a professional one. You'd say instead, I have some concerns about the projections, or the data seems inconsistent.
The contrast between those settings is stark. And then we have slang that is universally friendly but still bound by rules of register.
Yeah, the phrase no worries is a perfect example from our sources.
No worries has a brilliant cultural footprint. It originated in Australia as an expression of warmth and egalitarianism.
And it has since swept across global English. It effectively replaces you're welcome or don't worry about it.
The psychology behind its popularity makes total sense. Saying you're welcome sometimes implies a transactional debt, like, I did a favor for you, and now you are welcoming my generosity.
No worries completely levels the playing field.
Right. It tells the person, we're in this together, and my help was no burden at all. If you hold the grocery store door for someone and they say thanks, no worries is the ultimate friendly response.
However, you have to read the room. If you just finalized a multi-million-dollar contract with a highly formal, traditional client,
Oh boy.
and they send an official email expressing their gratitude for your partnership, replying with, no worries, mate, drastically undercuts the gravity of the moment.
Yeah, you need to elevate your register there and reply with, it was our absolute pleasure to assist you.
The shifting rules of context are definitely a hurdle.
But for anyone learning the language, I think the most frustrating aspect of slang is when it violently rejects logic altogether. The forces highlight the phrases, I'm down for it, and I'm up for it.
This is a prime example of English just completely defying spatial logic.
Wait, if I am down for pizza and up for pizza, how does a beginner know which direction to go?
Well, that's the thing. If a friend asks, we're getting pizza tonight, are you down? The sources confirm that means count me in, I want to participate.
Okay.
But if they ask, we're getting pizza tonight, are you up for it? That translates to the exact same feeling of excitement and willingness to participate.
We are using opposite vertical directions to arrive at the exact same emotional destination. It makes zero sense.
Trying to parse the logic of those directional words will only lead to frustration. The sources introduce a vital concept here, which is building a mental switchboard.
A mental switchboard.
Yeah, fluency isn't about solving an equation where up equals one thing and down equals another. It's about training your brain to recognize the entire phrase as a single, indivisible emotional unit.
So slang is highly contextual, sometimes illogical, and dies out quickly as trends change.
Exactly.
But what about the phrases that survive the decades or even centuries, yet still make absolutely no literal sense to an outsider?
That brings us to the most colorful part of a secret language: idioms.
Idioms.
Idioms are essentially the cultural artifacts of a language. They're phrases where the literal meaning of the individual words has completely detached from the accepted meaning of the phrase itself.
A great way to conceptualize idioms is to think of them as an inside joke shared by an entire culture.
I like that.
When you have an inside joke with a close friend, you can drop one random word and both of you will burst out laughing.
Okay.
A stranger standing next to you would be completely bewildered because they don't have the shared history.
Right. You cannot translate an inside joke word for word. You just have to learn the punchline.
And English is saturated with these hidden meanings.
Let's examine how native speakers use them to describe specific workplace or social scenarios. The sources provide a great example regarding precision, which is hit the nail on the head.
The visual imagery there is very specific. A nail has a tiny surface area.
Yeah.
Hitting it dead center with a heavy hammer requires incredible accuracy. So when someone in a meeting cuts through all the noise and identifies the exact core issue of a complex problem, saying, "You hit the nail on the head," is the ultimate compliment.
It means their analysis was 100% precise. Conversely, what happens when that analysis fails?
The sources offer the idiom back to the drawing board.
Think of the engineering or architectural origins of this phrase.
It paints a picture of a massive blueprint. You spend months drawing up plans, you build the prototype, and it shatters immediately.
You can't just fix it with tape.
No, you have to walk all the way back to the literal drawing board and start over from scratch. It is a very vivid way to describe a complete reset after a failure.
And these physical metaphors are also heavily used to describe social dynamics. Take the phrase break the ice.
Everyone has experienced that agonizing tension when strangers are placed in a room together.
Oh, it's the worst.
Nobody is talking, and the silence feels physically heavy. The air in the room feels stiff, almost completely frozen.
The idiom captures that exact physical sensation. When someone finally tells a joke or asks an engaging question, the rigidity shatters.
They break the ice, allowing warmth and natural conversation to flow.
It transforms an abstract social anxiety into a tangible physical action.
But the physical metaphors aren't always about relief. Sometimes they capture sheer panic.
Oh, yeah.
The source material shares a highly relatable, incredibly painful anecdote regarding the idiom, "put your foot in your mouth."
The story of Marcus. It is a masterclass in conversational disaster.
So Marcus sees a coworker looking absolutely glowing and radiant. He walks right up to her, full of positive energy, and asks, "Oh, wow, are you pregnant?"
And she looks him dead in the eye and replies, "No, I just bought a new skincare cream."
Oh, man. The secondhand embarrassment from that interaction is just palpable.
He said he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him alive.
That moment is the perfect definition of putting your foot in your mouth. It means speaking too quickly and saying something accidentally offensive or deeply awkward.
And the imagery is brilliant because it represents a physical impossibility.
It's as if your own foot flew up to block your mouth from saying anything else stupid, representing the social impossibility of taking the words back.
It is evocative, slightly absurd, and native speakers weave these idioms into their daily lives without a second thought.
Which brings us to the ultimate challenge for the learner.
Right. We have isolated these concepts, softeners, slang, idioms, but in the real world, they don't happen in isolation.
They happen simultaneously at full speed.
To illustrate the mental load this requires, the sources provide a scenario of two friends meeting at a park after a demanding week. Let's break down the layers of what is actually being said.
Okay, let's do it.
Friend A starts by asking how friend B is doing. Friend B replies, "Honestly, I'm kind of running on fumes today."
Immediately, we have a layered response. Friend B uses the softener, kind of, to avoid sounding overly dramatic,
Right.
and pairs it directly with the idiom running on fumes. The imagery is a car with an empty gas tank. sputtering along on the last vapors of fuel. It expresses total exhaustion without just saying, "I'm tired."
The conversation continues. Friend A asks about a big project launch at work. Friend B says, "It was a total mess. Our strategy failed. We had to go back to the drawing board."
There is our idiom for starting completely over from scratch. Friend A then sympathizes and asks if they managed to fix the problem.
Friend B answers, "Yeah, our manager hit the nail on the head, redesigned the plan, and honestly, the new campaign has much better vibes than the first one."
Look at the density of that sentence. We have the idiom "hit the nail on the head," expressing the manager's perfect precision, followed immediately by the slang "better vibes" to describe the improved overall energy of the new campaign.
Finally, the interaction wraps up. Friend A says, "Sometimes a setback is a blessing in disguise. Are you up for grabbing some chocolate cake?" Friend B responds, "I am totally down for cake."
The illogical switchboard in full effect. Up for and down for meeting in the middle in the name of chocolate cake. It is a beautiful, deeply human interaction.
It really is.
But analyzing it like this highlights a massive concern for the beginner. I mean, is it really realistic for a new learner to juggle all these softeners, slang, and idioms at the exact same time without sounding like a confused robot?
It is a significant mental hurdle. The core philosophy of the source material is that fluency is not synonymous with immediate, flawless execution.
Okay.
It is not about memorizing a textbook of 200 idioms and forcing them awkwardly into a chat. It is about exposure and gradual integration.
You slowly accumulate these colorful chunks of language until you sound like your authentic self, rather than a robot reading a script.
Exactly. And to aid in that gradual integration, the sources highlight a highly practical tool called the Fluent Mind AI Assistant. It addresses the specific fear of making mistakes in front of real people.
The AI acts as a sandbox for your mental switchboard. You can type in a prompt like, "Help me practice a casual conversation using slang," or "Review this blunt email and suggest ways to soften it for my boss."
It provides instant, targeted feedback without any judgment. It allows you to experiment with the wardrobe of language before stepping out in public.
It removes the fear of putting your foot in your mouth. So what does this deep dive mean for you, the learner navigating this complex landscape?
Well, if we synthesize the journey, the first major takeaway is that textbook grammar is merely the scaffolding.
Yay.
To truly connect with native speakers, you must utilize the psychological safety net of softeners. Words like kind of, yet, and hit or miss remove the aggressive edge from direct statements and invite collaborative empathy.
Second, you must constantly assess your environment to manage your slang wardrobe. Terms like vibes and no worries build wonderful rapport in casual settings, but recognizing when to elevate your register to standard English is what prevents a boardroom disaster. Context dictates the clothing.
Finally, embracing idioms means accepting that language is deeply rooted in cultural imagery rather than literal translation. You have to learn the punchlines to the inside jokes, understanding the physical metaphors behind hitting nails, breaking ice, and going back to drawing boards.
Ultimately, the secret language of English isn't a strict set of rules. It's an extension of human connection. Every single mistake you make, whether it's dropping the wrong slang term or slightly mangling an idiom, is just another stepping stone closer to fluency.
And as you continue building that switchboard, consider this final thought from the source material's exploration of idioms. We discussed how English uses physical directions like up for and down for to describe the abstract emotion of excitement.
The spatial logic that makes absolutely no sense on paper.
Right, but think about what that reveals regarding human psychology. Why is our language so dependent on physical movement and bodily sensations to explain complex, invisible emotions?
Wow, yeah.
We break ice to describe social tension. We put feet in our mouth to describe regret. The next time you encounter a physical idiom, whether in English or your own native language, ask yourself, why did my culture choose this specific physical action to make sense of that specific human feeling?
It transforms every casual conversation into a window into the human mind. So the next time someone asks you to give them a hand, you won't panic. You will know exactly what they mean, and you'll have the linguistic tools to jump right in and connect. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep exploring.